Should we kick it off? Okay, so thank you all for coming to this Austin Startup Week edition of Working with Giants. This is actually part of a series that we've been running here at Capital Factory, where we are bringing in some of the larger corporate programs in Austin that work with startups in some capacity, and usually each of these are around certain themes. So we've done cybersecurity, we've done health tech. This one is going to be AR/VR. We've done productivity, and these are all always fun and interesting. So today on the panel we have Edward Doan with Google, and Tarun Nimagada with Mutual Mobile, and Anil Sahini with Innovation Incubators, part of the Merck Group. And myself, my name is Ryan Joy. I'm with Microsoft. I'm one of the startup evangelists on our US startups team. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves in more depth in their companies here in a second. To start out, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the landscape, if you will, of kind of corporate startup programs in Austin. So this is a list that I've been building out as I run more and more of these events, and there are a lot of different sort of corporate startup programs that are available to you as entrepreneurs in Austin. The entire reason this event series got kicked off is show of hands if you've been to one of Josh's Ask Me Anythings, or Intro to the Austin Startup Scene, or Intro to Austin Accelerators, or any of those, right? So I've been to a few of those as well, participated in Intro to the Austin Tech Community, and I think those are great series. And in passing one day, I said, hey Josh, there are also all of these corporate startup programs that entrepreneurs and startups may not know that they can make use of in Austin. And he said, that's a great idea, you should run with it. And so here we are today. A lot of these programs are kind of general program components. We'll get into some of the specifics about what our different companies offer specifically around AR/VR. But in general, a lot of the large corporations you have in-kind services, cloud hosting credits. There's oftentimes technical and business training and/or business training. If you're building solutions on top of our respective platforms, there's oftentimes architecture design review sessions. There can be co-marketing if you have an interesting solution built on top of one of our platforms. There's definitely mentoring, either from the technical or even the go-to-market strategy side of things. There's obviously customer introductions, investor introductions, and for some opportunities, there's even office space and things like that. So for instance, if we have a space, Microsoft has a space in San Francisco called the Reactor that you can co-work out of if you're in town for an event or investor meetings and things like that. So now I'm going to let each one of our panelists kind of talk a little bit about themselves, and then also answer the why Austin question. Why Austin? Why Austin AR/VR? Why do you invest in the ecosystem?
I'll go first. My name's Tarun, co-founder and CEO of Mutual Mobile. We started the company 7 years ago after sort of graduating from UT, and just really mostly kind of just didn't want to get a job anywhere, and so that starting a company would be a good way to avoid having to have an employer.
Isn't that the work 80 instead of 40 rule, though?
Yeah, I had to end up working a lot harder, way more stressful, so I don't recommend it necessarily. But why Austin was because we were in Austin, and that's the only thing we knew. Turns out that it was a really lucky thing that we were in Austin, and didn't come to find out all of the reasons that Austin was a great place to be until much later. And one of the biggest reasons is I think now we've grown to several hundred people here in Austin, and we've got a really great community of folks from a lot of different disciplines, and I think this worked incredibly well for us when it came to building a cross-functional sort of team, right? And we designers, engineers, etc. And with VR and AR, we have, I think, a kind of a similar sort of challenge where we need people from film. You need you need people that have experience in game development, and Austin's sort of really great with that. So I think the diversity of skill sets in Austin is really nice. These days, relocating to people in Austin, at least for the last 3-4 years, has been really good. About a third of the people that we have at the company, we've relocated to Austin, and a lot of times you have to convince somebody's spouse to come to Austin too, and it's not that hard to do. So I think a lot of great reasons to love Austin. The one thing that it's also, you don't have to compete as much with Google and Facebook and Silicon Valley sort of bubble. So the fact that we're sort of insulated a little bit from that, I think can be another advantage for Austin, in that it allows, I think it allows for people to make some more sort of longer term, plans, and be a little less caught up in the noise that, otherwise you'd get caught up in.
Cool, thanks. All right, hey guys, Edward Doan, and I'm from Google. There's a lot going on this slide now that I'm looking at it. I was given one slide, had to make it all fit. All right, so I'm Edward. I've been at Google for 7 years here in Austin, where I lead our Chromebooks for Education team. And so the thing that I've been passing around is Google Cardboard. You may have probably seen that before. It's I'm actually doing it as part of something called Google Expeditions, where we go around the world to schools where budgets are tight and kids otherwise don't have an opportunity to go on field trips anymore. And so we're bringing the field trips to the kids through expeditions. And so you guys may have seen great white sharks or the Great Wall of China in VR through the cardboard units that I've seated around the room. So going back real quickly to why Austin, Google believes strongly in Austin. As you can see, Google Fiber, Austin was one of the initial launch cities, and we've seen remarkable success, especially in the enthusiasm and the uptake for the 1,000 megabit up and down at a very competitive price for residential and business users. We also are in the process of building a beautiful new campus over on 2nd Street in San Antonio, where we plan to grow our presence in 2017 and beyond. And again, that's showing our commitment to Austin. It's, as Tarun was mentioning, it's got a wonderful base for talent. I'm a Longhorn myself. Really believe in the quality of the programs at the University of Texas. And so being able to tap into that local talent is just fantastic. And in other avenues, South by Southwest, this is for 1 week a year, we are the center of gravity for the tech universe, right? And it's wonderful. And so Google has a big presence at South by. We come around to see all the great ideas that you guys are putting out there. So in relation to AR and VR, so I'll kind of start. So over in the lower right, you see Tango. Tango is our augmented reality solution, and the animated GIF there is showing how conceptually some furniture might look in your room. And that's enabled through an upcoming mobile phone called the Lenovo Fab 2 Pro that's got a couple of new cameras and depth sensors on it. And through Tango-enabled apps, if you're someone like Wayfair or Lowe's or Home Depot, you can, or whatever you guys come up with, you can use Tango to help place virtual objects into real space. It can also be used for applications like wayfinding, like indoors, you don't have the benefit of GPS. Tell that to anyone who's tried to play Pokemon Go indoors, right? But with Tango, you're able to, the device and the app are able to see spatially and help you navigate around a crowded department store, for example. In the lower left, you see an animation, and that's for Daydream. So Daydream View, which is the little gray headset you see over on the left, that was announced yesterday at an event we held in San Francisco. Daydream is kind of our next evolution of VR for the masses. So Cardboard was kind of that first step, and Cardboard continues to be a really important platform. There is no more accessible way to get into VR than through Cardboard. So if you guys haven't already checked it out, I encourage you to do so. There's a ton of Cardboard apps out there, and it's really easy to build for. So as far as engaging with Google, you guys as entrepreneurs, you'll see, well, that logo in the upper left matches the one over there on the wall. Capital Factory is a Google for Entrepreneurs Tech Hub partner. And what that means is that in order for us to really scale out our reach and talk to as many entrepreneurs as possible, we rely on strong partners like Capital Factory to to nominate those startups that they see as having strong potential and could use mentoring or Google Cloud Platform credits. You know, we give away thousands of dollars of credits for Cloud Platform. It's the same platform that other AR startups, like you might have heard of Snapchat, now Snap Inc., and Niantic with Pokemon Go, they've built these wonderful AR-enabled apps that are running with Cloud Platform as their backend. So yeah, that's a little bit about Google and why we're here in Austin. So I'll pass it over to Anil.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anil, and today I'm representing EMD Serno, which is a business of Merck KGaA based in Darmstadt, Germany. We are a 350-year-old pharmaceutical and chemicals company. We're pretty much the oldest pharmaceutical company in the world. So we'll turn 350 in 2018. Over the past few years, actually as a part of our innovation initiatives, we've been looking at external collaborations through accelerator programs like Capital Factory and also partnerships with universities. So as we're doing this, we actually scouted around the world, and Austin is one of the cities we picked. I mean, I'll give you a couple of reasons why we did that. We have a lot of demand coming from various parts of our company and in virtual reality and AR. Just to talk a little bit about kind of businesses that we are in. We have three divisions within Merck. One is our traditional healthcare division, where we actually make drugs and prescriptions in the areas of infertility and multiple sclerosis and stuff like that. We also have a life sciences division where we actually manufacture equipment for scientists, engineers in laboratories and manufacturing plants. We also have a third division called performance materials, where we actually manufacture liquid crystals and pigments that are used in displays in TVs and in phones and stuff like that. All of these divisions, there's a lot of demand running around. How do we actually improve our digital footprint? How do we actually look at creative ways on how to educate our consumers and customers about the products and the kind of the market that we are operating in? Like Tarun and Edward are mentioning, I mean, the diverse skills that Austin is offering, I mean, that's one of the reason why we actually pointed towards Austin. And VR, I mean, the combination of VR, we found Austin as a sweet spot that actually makes us, okay, we need to invest here in Austin. We actually looked at least 5 to 6 cities around the world. Just to mention, we are actually operating in 65 countries around the world. We have 50,000 employees working in these sites. And to start with, our CIO has actually decided to actually invest in Austin. So I'm the first person on the ground here, and I started to make some connections, and I've been here for the past 3 months. It's been an amazing experience working with people like Tarun and his team and other companies. The kind of collaboration that these people have, they actually work very closely with other companies, which is very surprising for us. I mean, for one project, I can actually go to different people, and they're very cooperative, and they're actually pointing us to the right people. So we think Austin has got a huge potential where enterprises like Merck can actually tap into. So this is one of the reasons why we actually came here. We want to increase our footprint here in Austin, so we actually are hiring here in Austin. We're going to have a co-working space here within Capital Factory, and probably by end of this year, we'll have a full-fledged team working specifically on VR and AR, because we have a lot of demand coming in that areas, especially around patient education, patient training. How do we actually create virtual congresses for patients, where patients don't even have to come out of their office or homes and interact with other patients within the community? Education is another huge thing for us, where how do you actually raise awareness of the disease using different digital ways? We also want to get into smart labs, where we want to use AR and VR on how do you actually simulate these trainings in an immersive environment. Right, so these are all the kind of use cases that we have, which we've been consolidating, and we started to work with these niche companies like Mutual Mobile and other companies in the domain. And it's great. I mean, if you see here, companies like Microsoft and Google, so we want to be close to the startup ecosystem. I mean, that's a huge thing for us. We've been working in a 350-year-old company. We want to come close to the startup companies, and we want to take the innovation coming in from these companies and take it back to the organization. So there's a lot of enthusiasm within the company, and we're looking forward for this.
Cool. Ryan?
You guys do have a mic, I think you're sitting
Oh,
up
we
there.
do, yeah.
You press on the bottom, it'll turn on, although I don't, hopefully there's some feedback. Cool. And so, again, my name is Ryan Joy, and I'm the local startup evangelist at Microsoft. And you know, I get to work with a lot of startups across a ton of different industries, a lot of cloud startups, a lot of productivity, whether they're marketplace or AI or any of those number of things. I'm also very excited about HoloLens and the AR and VR movement. Interestingly enough, I was approved for, I'm a developer as well, my background is technical, and I was one of the first wave developers approved for HoloLens, so I ended up spending a significant chunk of my own money to get a V1, a device all the way in April. Maybe I'm the first in Austin to have it, I don't know, but exciting stuff. I know you guys have one as well. I saw Trish had one, or she mentioned she had one. And one of the things that I've been working, one of the reasons I got it was to help startups start to prototype on it and start to take over or port over their experiences from other platforms that they may have been building on, such as Cardboard, things like that, and saying, hey, you've got this Unity app that you've built for Cardboard or for Oculus or anything like that. You know, let's sit down and let's get it working on the HoloLens and see how it would work and see what the differences there. You know, like these guys, I'm super excited about AR and VR specifically in Austin, because I think that the city is in a unique position to capitalize on years of game developer experience, and we have some very prominent AR VR developers here. We have a local Unity office, Unity Austin office, which is strong here as well. And then Capital Factory is making significant investments and push to make Austin an AR VR town. So I'm super excited about that, and I want to continue to help with any of that stuff. One of the things I usually say specifically around my role, and I think this is also evident here, is that one of the big reasons that I started this series was to show that, you know, we're not just, if it was just us helping with technical resources or helping with giving away cloud credits or any of those things that we can do in kind services, we don't really need someone embedded in Austin to do that. So there has to be another side to that beyond, hey, here's some free credits, go run with them, right? Because we could do that with a tele-team or with some sort of onboarding concierge or anything like that. So why does Microsoft have someone embedded in Austin? Why am I paid to be here in Austin? And that is to actually get to know the startups, like I said, to potentially, on the AR/VR side, to help you port over your application, or to, if it makes sense, to get you connected to act as a liaison to someone on a technical team or on the cloud platform team, or do customer introductions where those make sense and things like that. And I think that's what, one of the key differences, in terms of investment and making that personnel investment in Austin. So one of the things I wanted to ask a couple of questions of our panelists, specifically around AR/VR. So AR or VR, which are you more bullish on? You personally, don't speak on behalf of your company, just where do you see the market going in terms of, what excites you?
I'll go first. Yeah, I think I think Tim Cook just came out and said he's more bullish on AR rather than VR. I think it's more VR than AR in the short to medium term. The pros and the cons, I guess, a lot of people are anti-VR because they think it's antisocial, and they're just like, that can't be how we live our future. It's got to be AR because I like all of this cool technology, but I want to live in the real world. How many of you have read this book, Ready Player One? Raise your hands. Yeah, and it's like a dystopian view of the future where the world is so expensive that you can't afford to live in the real world, and virtual reality becomes the only cost-effective way to live. And what's really cool about it is not the dystopian part, but the fact that technology then sort of came in to save the day, and now people can be social in VR. Kids are going to school in VR, and all of like human life essentially is lived in VR. Of course, I'm sure most of you have seen The Matrix and movies like this. And I think our bias to not liking that is just it's really sentimental, and that if we can all plug into a virtual world that is high definition, and like Elon Musk talks about, like a directly connected into the brain, then I think the virtual world is infinitely better than the physical world. I mean, the physical world has tons of limitations, and it's not as cool as it seems.
As a bullish statement.
I'm trying to think about Tarun's reality here.
Come live in my head, I'll show you how cool it is.
AR or VR, I think there's a place for both, to be quite honest with you. I mean, AR is already here, right? I mean, like, just look around at how many people are well, I don't know how many Snapchat users are here. Maybe some of you. Have you ever used a lens? Yeah, the lenses. I mean, that's amazing. People are using AR and not even know that they're using AR. And then, take it up to the next level. I mean, what Microsoft Xbox Kinect did a couple years ago, that was like an AR and people didn't realize it. So I think having that seamlessly integrated AR experience into everyday life is really cool. But yeah, going down the road though, to Tarun's point, VR, I totally think that's where it's at, and it's going to drive new and unimagined right now use cases that who knows what's going to come out next in terms of a use case for VR. I mean, it's got to go just beyond the roller coaster or the VR shoot 'em up game. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys think of next.
Well, I agree with both of them. I mean, there's definitely space for both VR and AR. I mean, the industry, we see the tech industry is actually taking both of these parallelly, and we, from healthcare point of view, we see use cases pretty much in both of them. I mean, traditionally, because we want to be a little cautious, we decided to actually step into VR first. Okay, let's get our hands dirty in VR. Let's get the company engaged, and let's get everyone excited through some kind of VR experience. And so hiring people in VR, we're also educating a lot and training people on AR as well. But from our side, I mean, VR, I think, is already taking off. It's already past the point where it can't come back anymore. It's not like 3D where everyone got excited, but it didn't go anywhere. I think we passed that bump. We're excited.
So I'll take the opposite side. I'm definitely more excited about AR. VR is great, and all the VR experiences that I've interacted with are great as well. But I'll tell you some of the reasons why I'm more excited about AR, and that's because it starts to change the way that we interact with our actual real reality. But so I've seen some really awesome demos about things like, for instance, there was a prototype where an agency did a proof of concept with I think it was Citibank Financial. It was one of the trade. It was Citi, and they had some Bloomberg terminals on either side of this blank space where they then had some visualizations that they could place in the middle there. And if you've ever seen a Bloomberg terminal or any financial trading software, it's very, very information dense displays. And that information is all important. The betas, the gammas, all that information for real-time trading. But it's hard to then also have information that gives you any sense of scale, like which asset classes are currently on the rise and things like that. And so utilizing the mixed reality environment of having the visualizations in the middle, but then having the information dense stuff over here, and their normal terminal, I think made a lot of sense. One of the other things I'm really excited about with AR is that it starts to tap into the way that our brains evolved in terms of storing and retrieving information. So I don't know if there's been much research on this yet, so I may be going way out off the reservation, so to speak. But if you think about it, whenever you're trying to retrieve information, when we try to remember where something is, like right now, everything in your house, you know where it is, right? You don't know exactly where it is, but you know generally where it is. In your garage, you know that widget that you want to find is over in that corner. Like our brains evolved to retrieve information in that kind of way, that spatial memory sort of way. And everything we do on 2D screens, we categorize everything alphabetically and in lists, which is not really, it's what we've been doing for a long time, but it's not really how we evolved to remember where things are. And so we look through a bunch of lists of icons and names, and we try to find that one file we're looking for. When in reality, I just know it's kind of over there in that general.
Your brain's kind of like a room almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about AR to start to unlock some of those different user experiences around finding information quickly and being able to then act upon it in whichever way. I do, like I said,
But what about the antisocial aspect where like you're talking to a person and then you're like also doing something else? That seems.
Well, that's why we just need everyone to have the AR glasses. Yeah.
So everybody could be antisocial at the same time?
Well, we'll want it to be mixed. We'll want individuals. We want everyone to experience the same AR VR experience.
I was a Google Glass user, so I'm not going to say anything here.
I do think that with AR, it's hard. It's more difficult to pull off. So with VR, whenever you're able to occlude all of reality and you don't have to take into account any of the physicality of the real world or lighting conditions, things like that, you're able to recreate everything. With AR, you have to take into account lighting, texture, make sure that positioning's right or not, and you have less tolerance for, or should I say, discrepancies between where this, let's say, this bubble should be placed over your head. If it's not perfect, it's very noticeable in a mixed reality environment, and so that's much more difficult for developers to be able to pull off. But I think if you do, actually augmenting the physical world is a pretty amazing thing. So one other thing, and this is something that we always get a lot of questions about whenever I do these panels, is so we talked about some of the things that we offer, how we kind of work with startups and founders, and we'll open it up for Q&A here in 1 second. But first, I wanted to have everyone answer, how to engage. So I'll kick it off first. I encourage you to follow us on Twitter, and also come to our office hours. A lot of us host office hours here at Capital Factory or out at coffee shops and things like that. I put email with a question mark here because I don't know about these guys, but me personally, emails
Doesn't scale.
It's the worst medium that we'll never get rid of. But and of course, as Edward mentioned, we're all partners here at Capital Factory. So at any point in time, if you didn't take a picture of, if you don't follow us on Twitter, if you didn't take a picture of the slides up here, you can always ask Capital Factory for an introduction and get routed right to us. Does anyone else want to add another way to engage?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Well, with that,
Well, I was gonna say one more way to. Oh, this is off now. Well, you guys can hear me. One more way to engage, I'd also add, is through Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know we've got lots of developer evangelists active on Stack Overflow, and if you tag a post, Google Cardboard or Tango SDK, someone will find it.
that's actually a very good point. A lot of times where I'm talking to specific developer audiences, people speaking on behalf of Microsoft, whenever you click the little smiley face or you get feedback on those icons, or if you use the platform's user voice, so all of the HoloLens development platform is on user voice, and a lot of times you think that just goes into the ether and no one ever actually follows up on that. That's kind of the sentiment you get with product feedback. I can guarantee you that the upvoting various features or things like that has a direct impact on the development roadmap of languages, of these platforms, of any of these things. The engineering teams take that stuff seriously and comb through it every day. And similarly, comb through and watch the certain technology tags in places like Stack Overflow. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the floor for open questions.
I was gonna say, it's your human heart. Yeah, any of you guys who have the cardboard floating around, I'm now showing the human heart in VR, and so you can take a look at it.
Sure.
How impactful is it for you guys to work with local game developers, and how are you able to determine what provides value and how you're getting traction on both AR and VR solutions, and what could be better? How can you get more adoption?
Yeah, it's a great question. So game development and VR really close overlap, right? So if you look at mobile, I think games and apps were sort of kind of different. Games were their own thing, Unity, etc., and apps were their own thing, using iOS SDK. So there was sort of a hard line between games and apps. When it comes to VR, that line doesn't exist, because whether you're building an e-commerce application, a utility, a social networking application, or a game, you're using the same technologies, like a Unity, and then the same production process. You need 3D game design skills, producers. It's all sort of game development oriented. So I think companies that get into the VR space can't afford to stay out of the game space, number one. Number two, if you look at some of the most successful brand campaigns, so who's spending money on VR? Like, one of the big groups of people that spend money on marketing departments at big brands, because it's flashy, it gets people's attention. And they are not really great, brands are not really great at creating engaging content. Games are engaging content. Smart brands, from the days of mobile, have been working with, I think, small game companies to license what they've done and apply it with their brand. One of the most successful mobile brand campaigns was when Volkswagen took real racing and replaced all the cars with Volkswagen Jettas. And then they ran that app and they sold millions of dollars of Jettas as a direct result, of that racing game. So in VR, I think there's tons of those sorts of opportunities for independent, small game developers, is to think about how you would package your experience in a way that can create, a difference for a big brand. So racing, cars, obvious.
Yeah.
Right? But there's so many other examples. I think Alchemy Labs with the training, created a game that's really about training. Now, could we use that, with Merck to enable, training of people that work at factories and labs? And, it seems like that would be a natural, that could be a natural fit. What do you think, Anil?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Definitely. We've been working with Alchemy Labs, and they have a very good solution. So one thing what we are seeing in VR, especially when it comes to marketing campaigns and education, is we spend a lot of money on brand experience and stuff like that, but what is the ROI? I mean, how do we know that the people are actually engaging, or are they actually looking at the content and stuff like that? So the data analytics around VR or the immersive experience is also becoming very interesting for us, and actually it's actually very important for us when we actually build these kind of things. So you do a campaign, but to actually see the impact of these campaigns, we really need these kind of analytics built around these kind of things. So that's when we started to work with small companies who are specialized in these things. VR is just one thing, but we also need the nuts and bolts around VR. So that's why we've been working on multiple companies and multiple initiatives to actually take these things forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as mass market VR marketing or exposure, Volvo sent out cardboard as part to consumers who requested brochures online, and you could take a VR tour of their new XC90 SUV. Another one, if anyone went to Coachella, your Coachella tickets came with a cardboard, so you could get a feel for the venues and see what the stages were like before you even arrived there. So lots of marketers are taking great advantage of VR. There's the photography aspect of it, using things like the Google Jump camera, which is an array of GoPros that stitch together 360 imagery, or at a more affordable price, that's something like the Ricoh Theta camera that does full 360 video. But then there are also the more virtual VR, the sort of rendered experiences using really awesome tools like Unity, and that's where the game developers are really poised to take a lead in that area.
I agree with everything these guys have said around campaigns and things like that. Your question also touched on how do you measure the impact or ROI of some of this stuff, and I personally, I think Microsoft as well, at the end of the day, we're a platform company, so we're also looking for solutions that enable greater platform adoption. So just a couple of days ago, I don't know if you saw, but Microsoft Ventures participated in the Series B round of Cognitive Scale here in Austin, actually. Specifically, and the investment is to help them with HoloLens AI and things like that. So these are investments that will not only pay off for Cognitive Scale and for wherever they're doing on the technology side, but transforming the industry, so to speak. In a lot of ways, also when I'm looking at companies, I'm looking at things that enable other companies to go faster, further, whether it's with AI or whether it's any other platform adoption component. And then, on the campaign side, any of the exciting stories or anything like that, that's always exciting when it comes to a co-marketing or a go-to-market strategy point of view. But without a doubt, the things that definitely oftentimes personally get me excited and interested are any sort of platform play, whether that's AI, VR, AR, bots are really hot now in platforms, and enabling the millions of developers that are out there to then build on and extend the platforms.
For some of you guys who are kind of bullish on VR, I think it's very clear that VR is very applicable for gaming and entertainment. I think that's where it really makes the most sense, because that's where people kind of want an immersive experience. However, in terms of kind of business applications for brands, I'm not sure if it's as scalable, and this is where I might agree with Ryan, where AR might be a better fit, because you're really kind of creating a new behavior, and you're getting people, like most VR experiences, other than with cardboard, you need to be using the products with really fast-powered computers, and you're really creating behavior. So I guess just in terms of business applications that are scalable for a regular brand, what are some applications that you can think of maybe for VR versus AR? In my mind, I think AR is kind of has
I'm gonna repeat the question.
more, at least in the short term.
So I'm going to repeat the question, then I'll hand it off to our panelists. The question was essentially, given that VR is great for gaming and things like that, what are some advice or some recommendations, best practices for line of business applications within VR, and is AR maybe better suited for those types of applications?
So I think that's a great question. I kind of almost would like to divide up work into two kinds of work, right? One is the work that you do in front of a computer, and one is work that you do when you're meeting and talking to people, and different people, or physical world, sort of working on an object, etc. So work that you do in the physical world, maybe physically interacting with people, AR is clearly more interesting, from that perspective. That'd be so cool to be able to kind of have some sort of overlay, for that. But the work that we do in front of a computer, for many people, that's 4, 5, 6 hours of a day. I don't see why that's not just going to go the way of VR, because if you look at, I walk around our office, which is right across the street. We got a lot of people wearing headphones, and developers complain when there's too much light. So we've got great views, but they put the curtains down. I don't know why we're paying for this expensive view when you're just gonna, and the noise bothers them, and if people walking in front of them bothers them, right? It's really hard to focus and be productive with a computer. And then there's all this research that shows when your computer screen is 30% bigger, then you are 50% more productive, and it's kind of it's amazing.
Is that how you justify 30-inch displays?
That's how the developers justify it, and the
That's how I
double
did,
display. Yeah. And so if you're going to go that far, then it seems like naturally, let's just I imagine that in a couple of years, we're just all if you're gonna be productive, the way to do that is to wear a VR headset and work. Because then you're focused and not distracted, and you've zoned out the world just like you want to.
That's an interesting answer. I'm trying to think of any other workplace applications. AR, obviously I talked about Tango a moment ago. Google Glass for Enterprise is still a thing, and we're working with, for example, some healthcare startups here in Austin to help, for instance, surgeons be able to receive guided directions or to see real-time stats on their patient in AR. VR applications, besides gaming, something like Tilt Brush, it's more for artists, but using Tilt Brush on HTC Vive, for example, you can paint or model in full 3D and have that spatial depth. I've seen a similar demo on HoloLens, which I have to give you credit for, is an amazing, one of those few things that made me say, wow, right? That's good time.
Yeah,
so
it was me personally.
I liked it. But yeah, being able to model, for example, do CAD CAM work in 3D, I think that would be a huge practical application for AR.
Like I said, we're focusing more on VR this time. Let me give you one example. Because of the kind of market that we have, it's not feasible for us to actually ship these headsets to our consumers. It's technically not feasible with the kind of price the headsets are right now. One of the things what we're looking is, especially around pain management, where you can actually immerse a patient in an immersive environment. There's research out there that says this is very effective, right? So instead of actually shipping these headsets to consumers, you can actually leave these at a doctor's office or the pharmacy, where if a patient goes. In the past, sales reps used to actually drop brochures there, right? Now the new trend is we can actually leave these devices there, where they can actually put this, they can actually learn about the brand, they can get disease awareness. So this is one of the things what we're looking at. How can you actually distribute these, not directly to the patient, maybe to in a healthcare setting? That's one thing what we're looking. We also have some use cases around internal employee onboarding. We hire a lot of people around the world. Considering the complexity and the market we operate, it's very hard to actually educate the employee about what the company does and what we offer, I mean, what do we actually manufacture and stuff like that. So we're actually building a virtual experience about the company. And as you can actually onboard these employees, this is the first thing that can actually put a headset and they can learn about the company and they can learn about the products that we have. This becomes part of an onboarding experience from a HR point of view. I mean, we have use cases like that where you can actually, we want to use a VR experience for education and training for consumers and customers, both external as well as internal.
Cool. Go for it.
So I'm mostly excited about the application where you can immerse yourself in a live event, like a concert or a sports game. I was wondering how far is the technology, or how close are we to have a bearable experience, and who are the major players in that field that you guys that are on your radar?
Cool. So the question was, he's most excited about live 360 events and immersive events, but projected. So I'll take first stab at that. One thing on the community front, Austin has a very strong VR community. There's an Austin VR meetup that meets roughly every couple of months at the North Door. Definitely check it out on meetup.com. Join that group. There's also another group called Austin VR Video, I think. Is that what it's called? Austin VR Video, which focuses specifically on that experience. So you kind of think of it like a.
I'm one of the co-organizers.
There we go.
Talk about it.
Yeah. So and so the devices they have out there for 360 video capture and then projecting that, is obviously perfectly tied in with the VR movement. And I think that'll actually be a huge movement as well. You'll definitely see lots of celebrity DJs and things like that projecting concerts into people's homes to whichever device they're wearing, whether it's Google Glass or if they have a Vive or Oculus or anything like that. And that's absolutely a great immersive or a prime kind of example of an immersive experience. There's also another startup in town called The Wave that's just getting kicked off, and they're focused on creating these immersive DJ experiences in the VR space.
We organize a VR Beyond Gaming meetup. If you want to check that out. VR, yeah, there's it doesn't come to me, but yeah, there's a couple of startups that are doing trying to do live VR concerts and live VR. VR sports has been seems like an incredible category. Like I think that'll be one of the first breakthrough.
I watched the first NFL broadcast, but it was buffering the whole time, and it was
Yeah.
super.
You're not on
frustrating.
Google Fiber.
Anybody watch the Olympics on VR? You did? Yeah. What was the quality like?
I didn't get it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like YouTube has live 360 streaming support now too.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Wait.
Just on his
Oh.
note, one of the companies called Next VR.
That's
They
right.
raised a ton of money. They've got big contracts with Live Nation. They did the PGA Tour, doing NCAA tournaments. They were someone was at ACL just last weekend. They were doing live streaming and concerts from Samsung stage. Strange enough, Samsung wasn't using their own cameras, and all sorts of stuff like that. So there's some folks out there doing sports.
On the same line, so we're doing something called virtual congresses. In the past, we used to do these traditional congresses where patients, they actually go and they talk to their peers about the disease and stuff like that. There are a lot of companies that are actually doing this virtually now. You can actually ship a headset to a patient where a patient can actually virtually participate in these patient meetups, either live or offline. You can actually attend live. You can put a headset, you can actually go and you can actually walk through the booths, you can pick brochures, and you can have your own avatar and you can interact with other people. I mean, that's live, which is a little far away, but there's a lot of people who are doing this offline. You can actually record the whole thing in 360, and you can actually ship this content to consumers where you can actually attend these events offline as if they're actually physically present. There's a lot of use cases like that we're trying to get into.
Yep. I think he had a question first.
So I wanted to ask about this, if this isn't a step back, about the term gap of disappointment, right? That was kind of coined by the CEO of Unity, where it's kind of explaining the adoption rate of VR, where it's not linear and it's exponential, and we're going to go through a few rough years before we hit the golden year, I think in 2018. But he being the CEO of Unity, primarily a gaming company, I presume that this gap of disappointment in terms of when people will really adopt and use VR is relating more to high-end VR and gaming. So does that concept, again, of this gap of disappointment when people aren't really using it or adopting it at a rate that businesses need to be successful, is that applicable still to mobile VR, or what's the relationship there, and how is this marketplace existing in the next few years?
So, so sometimes this is also called, you call it gap of disappointment, but I've also seen a gap of disillusionment and some other things. But this is
The valley of disillusionment, or yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
essentially, this is the gap that any emerging tech has to. I've also seen it referred to as a chasm, because you have early adopters, and then you have a chasm that has to jump over before any emerging tech is widely adopted. Hey, speaking of Wave VR, that was Finn Staber, a local VR developer who was going to be here, but just apologize if you're not. So I'm actually going to give you an answer that Patrick Curry at Austin Unity gave to a similar question about why this time is different with specifically VR, and I think it's a great answer, so I'm going to steal it and repeat it to you. One, these devices have changed everything. They've driven down the cost of high quality displays, as well as chips that can render these experiences for us. So that's allowing for hardware to be, infinitely more affordable, and to be where you can have a Vive for $800 plus, and get controllers with that as well. That wouldn't be possible without the mobile devices on the hardware side. Also, because of the mobile devices, you now have thousands upon thousands of developers who have been developing, who have the skills, and who have learned how to develop games for the same mobile devices using either Unity or CocoaS 2D or Unreal Engine or any of these things where they necessarily weren't that interested in game development before. Once the mobile market and opportunity and the App Store market presented itself, they quickly skilled up and learned that skill. And they may not have necessarily done so had it still been relegated to only the PC or console markets. So it's not a giant leap for them to turn those same skills over to VR, right? It's the same skill set, a lot of the same tooling and things like that. And I think that's one of the big reasons that it's different. It has much more momentum and critical mass, both on the developer side as well as the hardware affordability and accessibility side.
Yeah, this is actually where I'm excited about Daydream, because what Google is doing is putting forth a standard for mobile devices to have the high quality displays and sensors and the responsiveness. I mean, that's been the huge difference between cardboard on a low end phone versus Oculus, right? Is you turn your head, you've got to have that sub millisecond response, otherwise people go into full barf mode. So being able to bring the higher end specs down into a device that everyone's got in their pocket, you strap it into a low cost viewer, and then have a good experience. I'm really hoping that this time VR totally goes mass market, and that way encourages the developers to come up with even new and more innovative applications.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what you said. Just one thought on this cardboard. I think in many ways I really struggle with Google's decision to create Google Cardboard. In one sense, it was mass market and introduced VR to a lot of people, but now a lot of people think VR sucks thanks to Google Cardboard. and that's sort of it's a tough call. Whether it does good or whether it really does harm. And that's why I really kind of appreciate companies like Apple sometimes, that they take their time with the technology, and it prevents this consumer gap where it gets like hyped up, it gets released, they try it, it sucks, and then they give up on it for a while, and they never come back to it. And it really I think it could really set the industry back like, I think Google Glass definitely set the AR industry back. I think everybody can agree about that. And so the price in VR, I think, was from a quality perspective is really interesting. Websites, if website didn't work right, people sort of put up with it. When mobile, people became a lot more picky, I think, when it came to mobile apps. So mobile app didn't work well, wasn't smooth, you'd get annoyed, you're like, not close it, delete it, not use it again. With VR, it's not just irritating when a experience doesn't work right. To your point, it makes you nauseous, it makes you sick, people actually, would throw up. So I think the bar for quality really needs to be high, and then stay high. And I don't think VR is a good category where you can experiment with weird sort of not as high quality sort of experiences. That's not the right medium for that kind of experimentation. There's other mediums that are more forgiving. I think VR is just not a very forgiving environment.
But where's the market? I mean, when are the 2 billion smartphone users who can use mobile VR going to actually be using it and buying into these applications and all that? I think that's what I was asking more, because we all know applications are going to be made, but when are people going to actually use them?
Yeah, I mean, Tarun, I'm not going to argue with you that cardboard is the gold standard for VR, but in terms of accessibility, it can't be beat. And so when I'm talking to, tomorrow night, I'm going to a Pflugerville elementary school and presenting about VR. I mean, I'm not going to be able to bring 30 Oculus sets with me and 30 PCs to show off to the kids, but I can bring 30 cardboards and the phones and show off to a whole classroom at a time. When does it get mass market? To be honest, I have high hopes for PlayStation VR. I think that's the...
How's that mass market? It's expensive.
But people have a high-powered PC in their media console already.
How many people have a high-powered PC?
What, 15 million PS4s sold, right?
That's not mass market. Mass market is...
not quite.
Mass market is billions, like smartphones,
billions,
right? So
right.
that's when, Daydream, I think, is probably the best shot at mass market.
High-quality
Daydream
VR.
and Gear. And I think the most exciting thing to see was the free Daydream or the free Gear VR. So, even if it's not free, what does it cost? It's $179. This case for my iPhone, this costs $79. This.
Really?
Yeah, because Apple makes overpriced.
Oh.
That's what that is the price of entry for VR. That's amazing.
Yep.
So it's cheaper than a battery pack. It's cheaper than it's costs just as much. And that's now, right? You wait a couple of years as this thing gets produced at scale, and I think everybody's going to get a free VR headset essentially with their smartphone, and it's the best. It'll become the best accessory you could buy for your smartphone. And so every year, I think we're run rate of 500-600 million sort of smartphones, Android phones that are sort of sold. It's crazy.
So my last comment would then be, so the gap of disappointment that we referred to earlier still applies to both mobile VR and high-end VR. They're still going to follow that same several-year curve.
I think like Tarun was saying, hey, well, actually, I'll plug the Google Pixel phone, right? Order one today, get a Daydream headset. I'm hoping that this is just the start, and every Samsung and Motorola and HTC phone comes bundled with a VR headset in the future, and that you'll be able to run your nice mobile apps on.
Yeah. Well, so the way I see the gap is, if you're thinking about it from the perspective, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of when's the right time to jump into VR, or if you have to have a business model that's going to not be subsidized directly by consumers right now. Like if you just make VR experiences and all you're doing is selling directly to consumers, then you're not going to make money. So brand subsidized or enterprise subsidized VR experiences, Merck, for instance, is in the VR space. If Merck is your customer, then you don't have to wait for consumers to adopt VR for you to make a viable VR business today.
What Alchemy's doing with Rick and Morty.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's many ways to make money on VR, even with consumer adoption staying low. Even, let's just say 2 years, VR doesn't pick up in the consumer space, you can still have a viable business. So it shouldn't stop anybody, I think, to get into the space.
And I will answer one last point on that. On the AR space, because there are so many business applications already there, there's definitely, businesses are a lot of times clamoring for some of these experiences. And in industries that you may not necessarily associate with AR or with cutting edge tech, oil and gas, they're very, they have hundreds of miles of pipeline and very interested in virtually or augmented reality, exploring the pipeline in a collaborative environment. Aerospace as well, where they have to design to specifications and tolerances that are very tight, and they don't necessarily want to build a one-to-one scale just to test something. They would much rather have a one-to-one AR or VR scale of that, and then determine that whatever design wasn't applicable. But again, that's not mass market. That's the line of business applications for these. So I know we had some questions over here. Let's start with you.
So I'm fairly new to VR AR. We're just kind of researching it right now, and so I've learned that, and I'm probably wrong about this, but it seems to me that the only unit that's out there right now that you can have sort of work in depth and have interaction with in a meaningful way is the Vive. If you have the room set up with the sensors and all that, and I see that as being kind of critical for mass adoption, either consumer or business, with broad applications. Are there other devices or are there newer technologies coming around to have that sort of capability without having to have a room wired up with sensors and all that sort of stuff that I should know about?
So the HoloLens isn't a VR device, but it's fully spatially aware. It knows exactly where you are and where the device is, obviously you, and then whatever 3D objects are placed in the space as well.
Okay.
And there are some other add-ons for other devices that will track you. And there's also some proof of concept stuff. They'll use things like a Kinect to figure out where you are in the world and things like that.
Is the new Google device also aware like that?
So, no, Daydream is not spatially aware. It's a true immersive VR experience, not mixed reality experience.
Can you interact with it though? Like how?
Yeah, so Daydream does have a controller, and we've opened up the spec to allow third parties to build different kinds of controllers to work with apps.
Okay.
I will say, so I think a real world application of VR today, Six Flags, some of their theme parks have Samsung Gear VRs attached to, well, you can use it in conjunction with these movable seats and the things that blow air at you, and gives you a bit more immersive experience than you would just simply sitting on your living room sofa looking at the VR headset.
If you're looking to get in to try something, I think the Samsung Gear VR is a really, really good entry-level VR experience. That is good enough to get that experience. Got a really good broad portfolio. For right now, I would say that would be sort of a really good one. If you're going, high end and you don't want the spatial stuff, I think PlayStation or Oculus, probably. But if you're going to go high end, I think you're going to want spatial awareness.
It's a striped shirt.
Yeah, I just had, it seems like obviously entertainment is going to drive the first wave of all this. And you mentioned some of the crossovers, engineering, design as far as aerotech and everything like that. But it sounds like it's all kind of designing and building and entertainment. What other crossovers do you guys see? You mentioned medical as well, but like what do you see as being the first crossovers into other industries outside of entertainment or outside of tech?
Well, my industry is education, K-12, right? So besides bringing cardboard to classrooms, if you had higher end VR and had more interactive lessons, I'm thinking like, healthcare training, for example, or gosh, wood shop without having the risk of cutting off a finger on the table saw. That might be interesting.
Who needs all 10 fingers? Yeah, medical is a big one. There's really on the industry side, there's a lot of different options. Whether there was I saw a project where some people were working with golf course architects and things like that. So exploring the golf course decisions and really understanding what that par 3 hole looks like, and then also bringing in additional data, because we have all of this data-driven decisions now. So you can say, oh, you know what, this looks great now, but how does it look on a typical November 2nd? It's like, oh, well, the wind is typically this way, and it's actually, there's a 60% that it could be snowing, and you know what? Actually, this doesn't actually look so good anymore because we designed it for this vision we have in our mind of, April, and that's not what it looks like all the time. So let's actually optimize in maybe a little bit different way. So there's a ton of different crossovers. It's just seeing those applications.
So, actually 2 questions. First of all, do any of you have virtual office hours in VR? Just curious. No?
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good
I
idea.
was gonna say, is Second Life still a thing?
Looking at the history of technology, it's always to be more efficient, to remove limitations. We have cars, we want to go faster. We have planes, we want to go faster than cars. We want to travel, whatever, electronics, microwaves. So looking at that aspect, it was interesting to me to hear each of you say long-term bullish on VR versus AR. I kind of see them as the same. In my opinion, they both have their own complications right now with technology, with development, with presentation, these aspects. I kind of see AR as a stopgap to VR, an effective VR, with really VR being the long-term true. And this, especially with implantable technology, nanobots, everything else we have going on, is there maybe a situation down the road, we have a future to where our full senses are completely immersed in the situation. Now it's just mainly visual, some hearing, air blowing on you for rides, things like that. But is it to where we have a point to where all the implantable tech is basically inside of us is our reality, and so at that point is VR all-encompassing? And so I'm curious of each of you what your thoughts are, if you think that that's actually a possibility, if that does occur down the road, and then what that really means if that happens, because that's kind of my vision that I see.
Neil?
Who wants to wax
I'm not saying I want it, I'm saying I see it.
philosophically? I mean, at some point in the future, the far future, I see that kind of stuff happening. I think visually it would happen first if you tapped in, like the Elon Musk tapped in the visual cortex or something like that, or the optical nerve. But in some ways, yeah, I get what you're saying in terms of AR. They'll definitely start to merge, right? Because at a certain point, you even start, the difference between AR and VR just is a matter of semantics, whereas does VR completely occlude your actual reality? But given enough processing power and sensor capabilities, including your eyes and ability to process that data, if I completely texture over, if I keep the physical dimensions of this space, but completely texture it over with something new, is that not then also VR? So
It's
I
all
can see the
about
point there.
perception, right?
It's almost like I think is a VR. Almost certainly VR comes. AR is harder than VR, technically speaking. So because of that, I don't think AR is a stepping stone to VR. I think it's more the other way around.
Really?
Yeah.
I see our stepping stone in that the background reality that we have is so, from visual and from a sensory perspective,
Rich.
it's much more immersive.
There's
than
more
VR.
content.
But it's easier, it truly is
Because it's
easier,
already there,
but it's easier to develop on an empty
Right.
canvas, which is what
Yes,
VR
sure.
gives you.
Sure.
But yeah, so it's like, but you see something like Google Street View going around mapping in 3-dimensionals for autonomous cars purposes, mapping all of that physical world and creating a digital replica of it. So I think the simplest way to make the virtual world interesting is to just create a copy of everything that exists in the physical world. I mean, you'll invent like new planets and new worlds that don't exist in the real world, But if you like the real world so much, there'll be a copy of it in VR, just hang out there.
Cool. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So you were waiting up here.
Yeah, so I have a question that's actually just a little bit back up topical. This is really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about how startups are interacting with these larger companies, like when it comes to the IP, when it comes to having these discussions and these partnerships? How does that get, as opposed to just developing on a platform, when you have a big, you think you have a big idea or whatever that you've developed, just how do you manage that, and what's the right time to do it? Obviously,
So it's actually a pretty straightforward answer, just depending on the level of knowledge shared. We have various legal documents that we exchange, whether it's just purely an NDA, just we're going to share potential pre-release stuff. If we're going to give you any working code, or if you're going to give us any working code, there's actually an NDA, I forget what the terminology is, but in my system I have a portal that I kind of go in there and check a few boxes on exactly what level of trust we're establishing between ourselves, and hit submit, you get a DocuSign, and boom, we're both legally bound. It's that simple.
So you were just asking about IP?
well, not just IP. What is some things. This is a more general question. Doesn't have to be just AR,
Yeah.
VR, but in interacting with
Small startups interacting with big companies.
Yeah, like what is, like what's the best way to, maybe you're the right person to ask, is what's the best way to build that relationship? Can you give us some background?
You've worked with lots of large companies.
On how to do that, because I think for some of us it's scary, right?
Right.
Like, when do you do that? How do you build that trust? Can you give us some pointers there?
So yeah, totally. I remember when we started the company, we had these like little houses on 17th and Rio Grande, and we were kind of working out of the houses. And when we tried to work with large companies, it was kind of this scary experience where they'd come see that we worked out of a house, and like, I'm not giving that project to this company. And really, the only reason we got that big fancy big office over there was just to make, I think it was like Cisco or somebody, feel comfortable about working with us. And so, well, I think the perception is a big part of it. But increasingly co-working spaces, and there's ways to kind of be and appear sort of professional. I'll say on the other side, you might be nervous about working with big companies. Big companies are actually nervous about working with small companies. Believe it or not, they have lots of insecurities when it comes to working with small companies. They know they can't actually figure out how to do it.
Keeps me up every night.
And increasingly there's an appetite for big companies to want to work with little companies, because there's a realization that you can't do everything, internally, as a big company. You're not nimble enough, you're not fast enough. So it seems like what I observe is across the board, big companies are starting to create programs like Mark is here with Anil in Austin, ways to, there's different types of structures to facilitate big companies working with small companies. Anil, for example, what he's doing in Austin is trying to establish exactly that kind of structure. Target did a retail incubator in Minneapolis, and they took 20 different companies through that program. And so we saw Nike do that with Techstars. You see Jaguar Land Rover did that, in Portland. So these corporate incubators, corporate accelerators, increasingly there are some companies that are sort of waking up to that and creating real good structure that enables startups to take advantage. I think a lot of those things look very, very interesting. Very, very interesting to me. Like Cisco has such a great program. All of Cisco's growth really comes from acquisitions of startups. So they have such a structured program, their EIR program, where they fund you and they give you reach and access. Beware of the big companies though. A lot of them make promises that they don't actually keep with regards to these introductions, etc. They like to dangle carrots in front of you saying, oh, I'm a big company, I'll do. It's not, 90% of that is not like really actually worth anything. So you actually have to like talk to people that they have helped.
Yes.
You know, and if it's not that company, there's some other company that will want to work with you. So understand that you're as valuable as you think they're valuable.
So my other follow-up is, as a person who got a Tango developed for something a year or two ago, where's the future of that project, the Tango?
Oh.
Just because you brought it up, but I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
Tango's definitely in the feature for Google in terms of AR, and I don't know if you were here at the beginning.
I wasn't.
The Lenovo
You
Fab
mentioned
2
it.
Pro. It's the first of what we hope to be many phones from different OEMs that
Right.
incorporate the Tango technology.
Right, and so those are going, it's gonna be into the phones now.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
So
Not a set standalone device.
Tango is not going to be a standalone device. I mean, you have to have that
I agree.
AR or VR capability readily available for you to use it. You don't want to have to go home, fire it up, wait for it to boot. Yeah, that's.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's really good news.
Okay, last question right here, I think. Did you have a question?
Orange shirt.
All right,
Or-
I had one, but.
go for it.
So AR and VR has been killing it at South by Southwest Gaming for the last few years, and it's been getting bigger and bigger. Come on, buddy.
See, getting bigger at South by.
Well, it's been getting bigger and bigger at South by Southwest Gaming specifically, and just 2 weeks ago, there was a big AR and VR track at the Austin Convention Center for Austin Game Conference.
Yep.
And actually, Jamil introduced Daydream at that part, so we kind of got like a 2 week.
Sneak preview, huh?
Yes, it's great.
Nice.
But my question is, Ryan, you mentioned crossing the chasm. When do you think people would expect to see, cross into the early majority for corporate and business applications, and what will it take to get there?
So I think you're starting to see that now. So HoloLens Enterprise Wave has been shipping, and so you're starting to see more adoption by industry and things like that. And one thing I'll say with the HoloLens, that team and Microsoft are specifically focused on the commercial market first, and consumer later on. And I'm very hopeful that will be a successful strategy, I think. Your specific question was, when do we see critical adoption of this, or I guess what do you define as critical success there? Because we already see them in specific applications. We already have partners at Carnegie Mellon and NASA. There's 2 HoloLenses on the space station. These are all not just proof of concept, but these are actually helping out with various experiments or various applications. The thing is, you as a customer of one of those companies don't necessarily see that, and I'm not sure when that'll hit. I will say this: whenever we first announced HoloLens, one thought that I did have was this actually potentially opened up a new line of business to companies like Home Depot. So currently, a company like Home Depot, their DIY, the weekend project market is huge for them, right? I can go into Home Depot, I can buy books, I can buy the materials, I can take a weekend class on how to install tile and do all this stuff. But then when I go home, when I have a problem, that's whenever potentially Home Depot loses that connection to that customer that they've cultivated that entire time. And the thought occurred to me, I have no idea if anything like this will happen. We actually are doing something with Lowe's, but it's a separate project, not related to this. But whenever I was thinking about this, I was thinking of Home Depot. So I'm actually going off brand and storytelling message right now. Don't tell anyone. But it just made me think that all of a sudden Home Depot had a way to upsell their customers that are taking these classes and then stay connected with them to the end of project completion. And I didn't really think about those scenarios until I saw some of the demos that were happening. Similarly, whenever I saw a demo with I think it was like an Arduino or Intel Edison or something, just a little powered robot that had a couple of LEDs on it, and that was probably less than $100 of kit, and yet they were able to then put a virtual avatar on it that I could then change into anything I wanted to, a robot, the robot from Big Hero 6, or any other avatar I wanted to put on it. And all of a sudden realized that then potentially we had an entire market for the makerspace to connect with the 3D modeling and Maya and artist space, right? Because right now, the 3D modeling and anyone who does that type of visual design, that's all locked in one industry. If we can unlock that into other industries, that's also kind of really interesting.
Cool. Said.
So I'm going to plug one thing, just because I do technical stuff as well. But later this month, I'm actually doing a HoloLens Intro to Mixed Reality development thing that'll probably be in preparation for a hackathon coming up sometime in the new year. But if you're interested in the device, and well, he left, but Trish from Mutual Mobile, I think, was going to be there. They have a device, and I have a couple of HoloLenses, one my personal, another one that's Microsoft owned. I'll let you handle the one that's owned by Microsoft. I'll keep mine. No, I actually do demos on all of them, but we should have a bunch of those if you're interested in Unity development and specifically how to sideload that onto the device. But Tarun already left, but I'd love to thank my fellow panelists up here, Edward and Emil. Cool. And again, thank you so much. We're actually just
At time.
yeah, we got 4 minutes, but I don't think we're necessarily getting kicked out right now, but I know they're utilizing the space over and over again. So thank you again.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.